I don't even think I need to give an explanation as to why, when, or how this game had its initial hold on me. I will talk about the when though. First, it was the Wii version of the game in my parents' living room in, I want to say 2009, somewhere around there. And after recently picking up the Skywalker saga after holding it off for a concerningly long time, it really made me want to revisit the older game just to go back and not only rememorize myself, but also to see if the complete saga is really as good and enjoyable as it was to me when I was much younger. As I was going through the complete saga, which is admittedly the only LEGO Star Wars game I had played until the Skywalker saga, it got me wondering if there were any icebergs made for the complete saga, or just LEGO Star Wars as a game franchise. And I think I found a pretty good one. Before we start, I want to be clear that we will be touching on all of the 3 original LEGO Star Wars games. This includes LEGO Star Wars The Game, LEGO Star Wars 2 The Original Trilogy, and, of course, LEGO Star Wars The Complete Saga. I bet we'll even touch on some Skywalker Saga stuff too. The iceberg itself that I'm going to go over is made by a person on Reddit named Wilfred Cthulhu, who has actually made different icebergs that I've also covered in the past, like the Super Mario Sunshine one. He was a huge help with this video and it wouldn't have been possible without him, so please go and subscribe to him. As for the material at hand here, this iceberg has 8 layers, featuring 62 different individual entries. If you aren't aware of how these are structured, entries on icebergs are sorted by how relevant and known the material is. So, the first chunk of stuff I go over will likely be very known by the LEGO Star Wars community, but the further we go, the more it's going to challenge the knowledge of the viewer. I don't really have much else to say in this part of the video. I'm eating a Toblerone right now, so I don't know if that's affecting why I sound like that, but regardless, it'll probably change the more we go, so let's go. Rebel Friend. Rebel Friend is a character who was introduced in the original trilogy when you save him from stormtroopers in the very first episode of the game, then being a playable character throughout the rest of it. He was later brought back once again in the Skywalker saga, and in that game he is unlockable by completing a side mission called The Healing Power of Crystals on the Hoth. Costing 20,000 studs to buy after unlocking, the description for the character reads, "Never has there been such a stalwart rebel trooper, a perennial figure in the rebellion's efforts to stop the Empire. Rebel Friend is a constant reminder of how noble and friendly the rebels can be." Indiana Jones. Despite Indiana Jones also having his own game in the LEGO Games franchise, Indy also appears in LEGO Star Wars The Complete Saga as a secret unlockable character. You just have to go into the question mark room in Mos Eisley Cantina, and once you're in there, just walk through the door with the camera on it, and doing so will play the trailer for LEGO Indiana Jones. Indy is then unlocked and can be purchased at the cantina for 50,000 studs. Functionally, he's not really an exceptional character or anything, but I do like how you have the option to unlock a character from a neighboring IP. Death Scream memes. Some of the death sounds in this game have been widely memed on in the last 10 or so years since the game's been out. The most notable example of this that immediately comes to my mind is the Yoda one. I'm willing to bet that just putting this on the screen is enough to likely make a lot of you hear the sound in your head right now. And the R2-D2 one is also a classic.
Okay, acting challenge, R2-D2 dying, easy.
Oh, sorry, wrong clip. Complete Saga editions. The Complete Saga was a massive step up from the 2 previous titles. Editions included an arcade mode with duels, minikit vehicle bonus missions, the red power bricks from the previous game returning with more implementation than the last, and 10 additional bounty hunter missions. This doesn't include the more general and obvious things like the enhanced force abilities, for example. But along with the game itself being expanded, there's so many things that were added that really make this game filled with tons of hours of content. Extra Toggle. Extra Toggle is one of the extras in all of the LEGO Star Wars games. For the complete saga, turning it on lets you use 16 new characters that aren't accessible in any other way. The characters it gives you are the Skeleton, Buzz Droid, the Training Remote, which is like this weird ball, Droids 1, 2, 3, and 4, a Womp Rat, Mouse Droid, Imperial Engineer, the Han Solo that's frozen in carbonite, an AT-AT driver, Scout Trooper, Rancor, and Wampa. Skywalker Saga release delays. The Skywalker Saga was originally planned to release all the way back in 2020, but after getting delayed 3 times, the first time pushing it to spring of 2021, then to early 2022, the game finally released with a launch in April of 2022. The biggest reason for the delays, according to the developers, were that they simply needed more time to work on the game, as everything was kind of a mess at the time anyway because of the COVID pandemic. The challenge of remote development also played a huge part in why the game took so long to come out. I think it's ultimately a good thing that it took longer though, especially if it means that the final product is much better than if the game was released in a mangled state like many AAA games are nowadays. Glad this game didn't suffer the fate that games like Cyberpunk did when it launched. Reminds me of a game that I've been playing recently. Weird. Short plus high jump characters. Most of the characters in these games have one of 3 types of jumping properties: double jumping, normal jumping, super jumping, or not jumping at all. Some characters are exceptions to the first 2, with the one you find out about the soonest being Jar Jar Binks in the complete saga. Jar Jar is one of 5 characters who can super jump, with the others being Captain Tarpals, General Grievous, Grievous Bodyguard, and Admiral Akbar for some reason. Short jump characters are just the tiny characters like young Anakin, for example. They're also referred to as shorties. This class didn't return in the Skywalker Saga, and that's part of the whole reason this entry is present on this chart. Complete Saga characters not in Skywalker Saga. The Skywalker Saga has the most characters I've ever seen in a LEGO game, with a grand total of 380 unlockable characters, with all DLC pushing the number to well over 400. But even with all of that, there are still some characters from the complete saga that didn't make their way over to the ultimate LEGO Star Wars title. The 14 characters who didn't make it are the Royal Guard, Bespin Guard, Rebel Trooper, Beach Trooper, Disguised Clone, Ewok somehow? Imperial Spy, Indiana Jones, Tonway, Palace Guard, PK Droid, and Ghost Yoda, Obi-Wan, and Anakin. It's definitely worth mentioning here that I very well could be missing a character. There are hundreds of characters, so yell at me about it in the comments if one of them somehow slipped my mind. Anakin's Flight. Being the second Cantina bonus mission, Anakin's Flight is really nothing more than just that, really. The opening crawl for the mission reads, "As the battle for Naboo rages on the planet's surface, a desperate assault has been launched on the Trade Federation battleships above. Anakin Skywalker finds himself at the controls of an N1 starfighter, heading for the droid control ship." You basically just collect proton torpedoes and destroy purple and red dots and eventually finish the level by destroying the red ones. You do unlock the Naboo starfighter though, so maybe it's worth it. I could probably go without it if I wasn't going for 100%, but to each his own, you know. This mission actually was planned for the first LEGO Star Wars game, with evidence to suggest that there likely were plans to have things like collectibles in this level too, evident by things like the tie gates in the mission. There's also an extra mini-kit in the Wii version that is impossible to collect being behind this wall at the end of the level. Opening this level up in a map editor shows that the minikit is so far away from this already very weirdly produced level that it is just a completely hopeless task. Speedrunner BD1P has a great video about this very minikit and the journey that it alone has, so his video is definitely worth a watch. After this one, obviously. I'll put a link in the description. To my surprise, the data for this is still in the first game, though it's only in the Xbox version. It hardly functions, if at all, but it is there, and you can reach it if you know where to go. Bounty Hunter Pursuit. Bounty Hunter Pursuit is the other side of the coin for bonus missions in the complete saga. This too was originally meant to be implemented in the original LEGO Star Wars, but was scrapped and instead repurposed for the complete saga. Okay, that was a lie. But this mission was initially planned to be put into the first game, but wasn't, and so it ultimately ended up as the 7th level, being the first act in Attack of the Clones. I don't really remember anything crazy with this level, but the part where that weird assassin bug, Cahoon I guess it's called, I just now looked this up, tries to kill Padme did kind of spook me as a kid. This mission is actually one of my least favorites in the entire complete saga, actually. I always found it to be incredibly boring, though I do think it has its purpose in the storyline because of the context. The satisfaction of endlessly shooting stuff and eventually taking down the bounty hunter is satisfying though, I will admit. I can remember literally never letting go of the fire button when I played levels like this. But yeah, the level itself is one of 2 that were planned for the original game, got scrapped from that, and later got repurposed into this one. Not much else to it. There is a glitch in this level that lets you collect 11 minikits instead of the intended 10, with the bug thankfully being harmless. Also, the skybox is upside down. Not sure why that might be. Handheld ports. LEGO Star Wars has been ported to all kinds of different devices, at least officially. The original has a Game Boy Advance version that's primitive but functional. The second game also has a Game Boy Advance version, but also has a version for the Nintendo DS and the PlayStation Portable. I've heard that the DS version of LEGO Star Wars 2 is one of the worst DS games ever made. I never had the luxury of trying it out, but if you can attest to that, I'd love to hear about it. The PlayStation Portable version looks like the most enjoyable version, at least if I'm going by graphics, but that definitely plays a part in my own initial bias by just looking at the games side by side. The complete saga also has the DS version, which is... I actually really enjoyed this version as a kid, not gonna lie. And lastly, the game is also available on iOS and Android. Never played those ones either. Maybe I should. I bet they're good for like long flights or car rides or something. Kijimi. I don't know if I can show direct footage of it since I can imagine it's wildly copyrighted, but Kijimi is a planet that gets completely annihilated by the Darafan, ordered by Darth Sidious, mainly to show how powerful the Sith were to the galaxy, as well as a number of other reasons that I am not versed enough in Star Wars lore to get deeply into, but the planet's destroyed, it's gone. Why is this relevant? Well, in the Skywalker saga, this planet is always on the galaxy map, even though the icy planet is not explorable whatsoever. The only thing you ever do on the planet is a story mission where you have to hack into C-3PO's memory to find out the location of the Emperor's Wayfinder. That's it. Now, of course it makes sense that a planet that canonically no longer exists is unexplorable. It's kind of just a spooky thing in the game to have it exist in the way that it does afterwards, though. It's commonly compared to visiting a ghost town when going to the Kijimi space since there is nothing there at all, just dead space. Weird that a planet that is not explorable still shows up on the galaxy map. It really would be a fascinating planet to explore in free play had it been brought back after it was gone. Cutscene-only characters. Of all 4 of the LEGO Star Wars games I talk about in this video, there are a total of 31 characters that only appear in cutscenes. LEGO Star Wars the video game has 11 characters that only show up in the cutscenes, Those characters being Reptiers during the invasion of Naboo, which are the things to the left and right of Boss Nass, with Nass himself also being cutscene only. The rest of them are Watto, the Pit Droid, Sebulba, Tusken Raiders, Ma Honic, Captain Tarpals, the Mustafar variant of Padme, and most obviously, Luke Skywalker and Princess Leia as babies. The second game has one less, being 10. They are more specifically Ponda Baba and Dr. Evazan in the same shot in the cantina, the ceremony variant of Luke Skywalker in the final shot of A New Hope, as well as the Rebel General, Wampa from one of the shots in the Hoth battle, General Veers during the escape from Echo Base, the 2-1B droid who appears in the final cutscene of The Empire Strikes Back, along with Luke Skywalker's pajamas variant, the general version of Lando when he pilots the Millennium Falcon into the Death Star is cutscene only too. Same with the character Nien Nunb, which is the guy that's co-piloting the Falcon. And lastly, in the same shots as the last two, we have the Mon Calamari, obviously excluding Admiral Akbar. The complete saga has pretty much the exact same cutscene-only characters as the last two. We have the Reptier again, the pregnant Mustafar variant of Padme, as well as the hospital gown version. Should I be censoring this? Jesus Christ. The medics in the same scene, and unsurprisingly, Luke and Leia as babies. Ceremony Luke Skywalker and the Rebel General again too. General Veers once again. The same pajama Luke Skywalker with 2-1B. The general version of Lando, Nien Nunb, and the Mon Calamari. There are a couple more like Jabba the Hutt, the probe droids, giant snakes, bats, the citizens of Cloud City, and the dragon snake, but that's basically it. Character-specific quirks. I can't think of many characters who have a quirky thing that is individually specific to them, but I can name the grouped ones, like the ghost characters. Unless you intentionally jump off the stage, these 3 ghost characters are invincible. They can't die. Pretty rewarding considering that collecting them all in the complete saga requires you to spend 3.3 million studs to have the whole set, with Ghost Yoda being the most expensive at 1.2. The ability to grapple onto things, super jump, throw bounty hunter bombs, and among many other things are just some of the quirks with the characters. Forlom, which is this guy right here, is able to use protocol droid panels anywhere throughout the game, despite being a bounty hunter and not a droid. That's just one of them that I can think of. I'm more than certain there's more. NPCs. This kind of goes hand in hand with the cutscene-only characters, except that it's talking about all of the characters who are unplayable. I'm not going to list them all, as I already listed nearly all of them with the cutscene-specific ones, but I will highlight a couple of them, starting with Dexter Jetzer in the Dexter's Diner hub from the first game. The waiter in the diner, being droid WA-7, is also an unplayable character. Characters like Jabba the Hutt, like we talked about before, and Rancor also count as they are unplayable. I guess that guy that sits behind the counter in the cantina in the complete saga would also count, as he's not playable, as far as I'm aware. Darth Sidious, the Emperor. Chancellor Palpatine, Darth Sidious, and the Emperor are in fact all the same person. Palpatine was his publicly known identity, allowing him to hide his much darker side, which is what led him to be able to orchestrate the fall of the Jedi and the rise of the Galactic Empire. According to what I can understand about the lore, Darth Sidious ended up declaring himself as the Emperor, which explains the 3 different names he had throughout the progression of his character. The reason why this is on here is that his name is Darth Sidious in the original game, the Emperor in the second game and complete saga, and in the Skywalker saga, his name is both. This is also the only character to change names between the games. Boba/Jango Fett are OP. It is apparently widely considered amongst the LEGO Star Wars game community that Boba and Jango Fett are pretty OP as far as prime strategy goes. And I mean, if we look at what they're capable of, Boba and Jango Fett are pretty overpowered, all things considered. They can fly, throw the bounty hunter explosives that break the shiny bricks, shoot 2 guns at once, and best of all, when you're playing as specifically Boba Fett, his maneuverability makes him really hard to be hit by anything, really. Well, as long as you're not terrible at the game. Wicket's colors. Wicket is one of the Ewoks who fought in the Battle of Endor in Return of the Jedi. The character's design progression throughout the years hasn't really been radically different, except for the version in the games. There's not a definitive reason given as to why, but looking at the character in this gameplay here, I can't help but notice that Wicket's headpiece is red. This might have genuinely just been designed this way to easily differentiate the character from the other Ewoks, or in order to create some kind of easy visual representation of Wicket by making the headpiece red, but I don't really know if that's true. The 2009 model is the closest to this, being orange, but even still it doesn't come close to the shade of red in the LEGO games. His portrait makes this all the more confusing, as in that, he actually has his orange hood and gray fur like he's supposed to. So, what in the world is going on? Unchanged battle over Coruscant. The fight that takes place at the climax of Revenge of the Sith in the complete saga features gameplay that is entirely recycled from its counterpart previously in the first game. Looking at it like this with a direct comparison shows that it's not completely the same, but yeah, it's exactly the same. This battle being completely unchanged is notable due to the fact that the other 2 ship levels in the first game were completely redone to play like how they did in the original. Yoda's chair. In the first game, Yoda has a chair, but in literally every other game, including the Skywalker saga, he doesn't have a chair. This has led to various people in the community looking for answers, only to come up empty-handed. This is likely a coincidental oversight by the developers, or perhaps maybe it's an intentional move due to how overpowered Yoda can be, but it's not likely for it to be anything beyond that. Though if it was, then I'd love to hear about it. Droideka ship. If you remember seeing those ball-like enemies in the complete saga, those enemies are called droidekas, and in LEGO Star Wars 2 for the Xbox 360, it was possible to pilot the droideka ship, but only if you downloaded a DLC for the game that added a bunch of the characters and vehicles from the prequels. The unlock method was different on the original Xbox, PS2, and GameCube, as for those versions, you could unlock these if you had save data from the original game on those platforms. The PlayStation Portable version automatically had it all unlocked when you started the game. Honestly, this entry is extremely confusing, so I'm going to clean it up real quick and just make some distinctions that hopefully make it make more sense. So, in the original trilogy for, let's just say, the GameCube, this is the character list, right? If you don't have a previous save from LEGO Star Wars the game, which was the first game, you only have this set of characters. But this is the character list on the PSP version of the game, which has everything assuming that you have the save from the first game, and lo and behold, if you look at the right middle, the droideka is there and you can use it. This entry is kind of inherently confusing. I'm not sure why. I'm honestly not even sure why I wrote it like that, but you can use the droideka if you meet these circumstances, basically. And it's classified as an other vehicle. Not sure why. This is bonus/double score zone alert. The double score element in the second game and the complete saga were pretty broken. The zones made it so that each stud you collected was multiplied by 2. That's already pretty good by itself, but if you have every score multiplier turned on and stacked on top of each other, it makes just one silver stud have the value of 76,800 studs. The sound that plays in the zones almost sounds like a bird being vocoded to metal or something. There's also a Simple Flips clip that emphasizes this. The way the joke started in that stream was that anytime they even kinda went off the main path in the game, he would start saying things like how this is a bonus zone. What's even better is that whenever they actually entered a double score zone, they'd all start yelling, "Double score zone alert!" And they would accompany the moment with audio effects to enhance the gag on stream. It was great.
Double score zone alert! Double score zone alert!
Breaker 19, double score.
Aga/Bananger1. When Joel from Vinesauce was doing a LEGO Star Wars stream in May of 2020, a Be Right Back segment began to go horribly wrong. I don't even really know what the bit he was trying to accomplish here was, but he starts playing what I assume is a McDonald's commercial from the 80s. Actually, oh my god, this is that one scene from that Mac and Me movie that McDonald's made in the 80s. Oh my god. This is the movie that has this in it. Oh my god. Anyway, he eventually puts text on the screen as part of the bit, but then somehow the text window on XSplit got stuck in the middle of the joke, resulting in this hilarious clip where he just can't get rid of it and tries to spam as all he can do is re-click on the window. After spamming for long enough, he eventually lands on AGA. Followed by fuck F. This entire incident is really hilarious, and I highly suggest you watch it. After this, of course. I'll put a link in the description to the whole thing. Bonandger1 is the other half of this entry. This was really hard to find online for some reason, until I figured out that all it was the name of the custom character that Joel used throughout the same stream that the AGA incident took place in. That makes a lot of sense for it to be in the same VOD in hindsight, since, you know, it's the same entry as the AGA incident. I'm stupid. Anyway, let's keep going. Triple jump. There's movement tech in the complete saga that allows for a triple jump to not only be possible, but consistently doable. This works with any Force user and some other characters, but we'll be using Qui-Gon Jinn as the example. The character is not able to reach this ledge here with the highest intended method, but by doing this sequence of moves, it becomes possible. Double jump into the air is normal, and then do the slash that goes downwards midair. As you perform the slash, if you switch to another character, you get an extra third height boost, resulting in what could only be considered a triple jump. This tech, when performed correctly, is really useful for reaching places like this ledge here that I showed earlier. It's honestly something that I wish I knew way sooner, and I didn't even know this until researching this video, and if I knew it, I probably would have saved a ton of time as a kid. LEGO Star Wars 1 and 2 fully cut characters. Of course, the first two games have their fair share of characters that are still in the files, but not used. This is actually leaning more towards the fact that there were a couple of characters that were planned, but didn't even get into the game in any way. The most notorious example of this was going to be a special character meant to represent this guy, who undoubtedly has the largest and most expensive Star Wars collection to ever exist. And his name is Steve Sansweet. If that name sounds familiar to you, then it's probably because there was a character planned to be a part of the complete saga called Sansweet, and while it still can be found in the files for that game, it wasn't included nevertheless in the other ones. The only way to get Sansweet to actually function in the complete saga is by copying the benkenobi.txt file inserted into the character folder and renaming it sansweet.txt. This rings true for the first two games, as Sansweet was also going to be in those games, but was cut for reasons that still aren't super clear. The reason speculates from not wanting to give him royalties, to cutting him out from a potential future liability standpoint, but whatever it was, Sansweet is not in the finished builds. We're going to talk more about cut and removed characters later. Ewok Grapple Hook. The Ewoks in the second LEGO Star Wars game had the ability to grapple as shown in this spot in the Battle of Endor. This didn't transfer over to the complete saga, and I don't know why. My best guess is that maybe the developers wanted to incentivize using Chewbacca or other characters more, but that reasoning doesn't even make much sense, so who knows, dude. Speeder bike loop glitch. While I don't fully understand how this glitch happens, I do know that if you're on co-op and you manage to get into a situation where both players get onto a speeder bike at the exact same time, I guess the game can't comprehend which player to put physically forward first, because the result of such a time scenario ends up causing this to happen. Well, at least it did when Simple Flips was just trying to play the game, but he's Simple Flips, so of course this happened. This whole stream VOD is hilarious as is. It's part of the same one that the double score zone joke happened in. Spaceman. Throughout all 3 games, one character persists in the form of 2 unused variants and one being mentioned in the characters folder in the internal build of the game, being the Spaceman character. We'll start with the first game's version. This is one of those unused characters that is impossible to spawn into the game without mods. Spawning him in anyway makes his appearance slightly bugged, with the face being screwed up along with the helmet missing entirely. The character is meant to look like this. I couldn't tell you how the people from the cutting room floor managed to fix it, I have no idea. The Spaceman does exist in the second game, but not beyond a mention of its existence in the list of character text files in the internal build of the game. The Complete Saga's version of this is basically the same as how it was in the first game. Beta Ben in 6-4. The beta version of Ben Kenobi is used in the Battle of Endor in the original trilogy. Doing a side-by-side comparison to the Complete Saga makes this even more clear. Well, at least if you know how to spot the beta counterpart. Boga Chase. LEGO Star Wars the video game has a deleted level that would have been the 3rd level in the game. Boga Chase, what exists of it, is just this. This level was meant to have Obi-Wan riding the Boga, chasing General Grievous, but with this hilariously primitive footage that obviously never happened and only lives on as this, we know it was meant to involve chasing Grievous because of primarily the visual context in the stage, but also because the Boga Chase set is, well, just that. The entire unfinished level is actually very fascinating, so I'll leave a link in the description to the full video covering it that Game Hut made. Yellow Skin Build. Before the original game released in 2005, there did exist some very scarce prototype versions from 2003 that are now referred to as the Yellow Skin Builds. We know these come from 2003 mainly because the uploads provided onto YouTube were uploaded by John Burton, the founder of Telltale Games. While not much of it, all of this footage was filmed long before any pre-release versions, or any public versions of the game either. The description says that this is a, quote, fascinating look at the earliest footage from that very first LEGO Star Wars game, 2 years before it shipped. Yellow LEGO Jedi, anyone? Also, I somehow didn't know that Game Hut was John Burton's channel until about 5 minutes before writing this. So if you want to kill me with a rock, make sure to tell me about it down below. The Impossible Stud. This is one of the newer and most recent developments to come out of the LEGO Star Wars games. A channel called Wii Super made an excellent video about this stud and the journey to eventually collect it. Every single stud is possible to collect in the Complete Saga, except for the one I'm about to talk about. If you go to this spot on level 2 of episode 4, if you pan the camera right down here, you can see what is the only blue stud that has never been collected, until recently. This stud is so far down that it's located very deep underneath a kill plane. The area where this is located is already niche enough. As with Wii Super, I didn't even remember that this area existed either. It's only accessible by free play right here, and requires you reveal a secret trapdoor using a bounty hunter, and then using a tiny character to get through said door to even get out here to begin with. While not very hidden, it's still very easy to miss. The platform itself only has 2 blue studs, not counting the impossible one. Weird map design if you ask me, but back to the stud. It doesn't matter how many times you try, it doesn't matter what character you use, this stud is just impossible to get. Tricking down into it maybe to get more momentum on the way down doesn't help at all with this either. It's not even possible with large characters like the Rancor. Literally teleporting into the coordinate position of the stud does not work. Now, if you've played this game enough, then you've likely noticed what I've left out of the equation so far. This stud isn't possible to collect under normal conditions. Remember, the complete saga has plenty of extra toggles that change aspects about the quality of life in the gameplay. One of these settings has the potential to make this incredibly weird stud finally possible to get. And that's Stud Magnet. Stud Magnet is already a super useful toggle that does exactly what it says. It makes stud collection much easier. So what happens if we turn on the Stud Magnet in this spot? Well, let's see. If we turn it on, pan the camera down just enough for the stud to be loaded and in the camera's view, well, there we go. We just collected the stud. It is really funny how not complex the solution to this ended up being. And yes, I know I'm super late to the stud thing whenever I upload this video. I actually watched this video when it came out, and you honestly should go subscribe to WeSuper if you like stuff like this. This stud does leave unanswered questions though. Like, why is a stud even right there in the first place? Was it a testing stud? A leftover that the devs forgot to erase? It's an interesting part of the game nevertheless. Upon further investigation, it's not even the only out-of-bounds stud in the game. The other one is, believe it or not, also in the same level as the first one, and it's located in this spot. And you can see it if you pan the camera just right. Collecting this one is just as straightforward as the other. Swamp Clone Wrong Color. In the original LEGO Star Wars game, the Swamp Clone in the 4th level of Revenge of the Sith is for some reason the wrong color in the game. It's meant to have green streaks like this, but instead looks like this and is blue. I'd love to tell you why, but I don't know. The Complete Saga's cover also makes a similar mistake. The clone on the box art of the game has blue markings, but when you see him in game, it's red instead of blue. This could have been done for a multitude of reasons. I'd lean towards the idea of it being this way for aesthetic purposes more than anything. It's also worth bringing up here that the Swamp Clone is actually different from this red clone, with this red clone being the Walker variant, also from Episode 3. GBA version came first. LEGO Star Wars the video game released for the Game Boy Advance, Xbox, PS2, and Windows on March 29, 2005. The GameCube version came later in April 2005. This entry is likely to be outdated information, as there's no credible sources I could find to suggest that the Game Boy Advance version was released first by itself before anything else was. It was the first to release if you only count Nintendo platforms though, with the gap between it and the Game Boy version being around a month. The Xbox's exact release date isn't precisely known, making it hard to confirm if the Game Boy Advance version really came out before anything else did. I'm inclined to believe this actually, just because of how radically different both of the games look and are. Just look at this gameplay. This is so much, it's literally a completely different game from the video game, the original trilogy, and the Complete Saga. Like, it's completely different. So I actually understand this a lot. At this point, I guess we have to just wait for a credible source to confirm our suspicion. LEGO Star Wars 1 Stud Collision. Sometimes when you'd collect studs in the first game, studs wouldn't have any collision with the walls, and sometimes the floors, and would go right through them, making you lose out on studs from time to time. First pod racing audience. The audience in the pod racing scene in the Phantom Menace features some familiar faces if you look hard enough. In the first game, the audience is low enough quality that it ends up blending into the scene more fluently as it conveys a random audience better since you can't really tell who anyone is, but this got changed entirely in the Complete Saga. The Complete Saga changes this to have a little more complexity to its crowd, but is way more visually clear with no duplicates of any kind. Just kidding, it's even more clear who the characters are, and Anakin is there even though he's in the race. Also a yellow variant of Count Dooku is there, Captain Tarpals or Jar Jar, maybe, whoever that is. C-3PO? What? What's even funnier about this is that the audience is more clear in the first game, but only during gameplay. And when you play the Complete Saga version, it's somehow less clear, therefore being backwards to how it is with the cutscene audience. Interesting. So, I'm editing this video right now, and upon further visual inspection, that is a complete lie. At least it is if you're playing on an emulator. I bet it still is true for consoles and stuff like that. Muppet Race Mania grapes. In the first episode of A New Hope, if you go through a bounty hunter only door and break some of these crates, it'll reveal 1 out of 3 of these grape block things, and collecting them all gives you a mini kit. What even are these grapes though? They're actually a callback to an older TT game called Muppet Race Mania for the PlayStation 1. It's one of many fruits and vegetables that show up in the intro for the game, and I'm absolutely in love with these things now. It's honestly making me kind of hungry, so I'm going to stop for a second and I'm going to go get a chicken bake from Costco before we keep going. I'm going to kill myself. Actually, what I meant to say was... that is much better. Soft locks. These games have their moments at times. Those moments unfortunately come with the occasional soft lock. These can range from hilarious to quite depressing, and these are some of my favorites. Normally the Jango Fett boss in episode 2 is a fairly involved fight that plays out like any other bit in the game would. But if you turn on the exploding blaster bolts extra and you use either the Droideka or Boba Fett, something really funny happens. The second you're able to do anything in the boss, you're able to just instantly kill Jango Fett. The game doesn't account for what to do if this happens since it's not supposed to happen, so the game is now just stuck indefinitely now. Sometimes the games just do this when unintentionally meeting conditions that allow for the game's progression to get stuck. OG Beach Trooper. The original Beach Trooper in the second game consists of a stormtrooper wearing nothing but a helmet and a blue Speedo. They put a jiggle animation on the pectorials. Why? The Complete Saga version changes this to be a unitard instead of just underwear. Hashtag, please bring back the nipples on the stormtrooper from Lego Star Wars 2. Actually, that hashtag is way too long. Let's just start a movement in the comments to bring it back. Or actually, better yet, why don't we comment that exact hashtag? That's totally going to work, and it's totally not just going to flag every single comment as spam. Let's do it anyway, though. You know what? If you comment that, I will allow it, and we'll see how many we can get. The one with the most likes wins a Lexus LFA. Boog hopping. Boog hopping is a type of jump tech originally conceptualized by, I think, this person? Moai of Knowledge? In order to do a boog hop, you have to use the Magna Guard and the Droideka in the first and second player slots, or second at first, it really doesn't matter, as long as you can instantly switch back and forth, that's all that matters here. Jumping as the Magna Guard jumps really high, as we all know, but combining this with a Droideka character switch gives you a tiny boost, similar to the triple jump we talked about earlier. If you time it just right, initiate the Magna Guard's slam attack at the highest point in the jump, and then instantly swap to the Droideka, it results in a super high jump which obviously isn't intended to be possible whatsoever. Like with the triple jump, boog hopping allows you to skip sections of the game, which doesn't mean much unless you're in free play, but definitely has its speedrunning applications for time saves, since the game is pretty long, all things considered. Asajj Ventress and Saesee 10. Asajj Ventress and Saesee Tiin are, in my opinion, more niche characters that are less known in the Star Wars universe, and it's possible to get their character pieces in the complete saga as part of 100%ing the game. Asajj Ventress appears in Tales of the Underworld, The Clone Wars, and The Bad Batch. I won't say anything else about her as I don't really know how much I'd be spoiling about the character. I also, honestly, just don't know a lot about Asajj Ventress as a character, because I haven't seen The Clone Wars. Well, I have, but it's been a very long time, and it was only very briefly, like a decade ago. I also am just not knowledgeable enough on Asajj as a character. I know some people are, I'm just not, so on to Saesee Tiin. And Saesee Tiin was a member of the Jedi Council in the final years of the Republic, and can be seen in the Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, and of course, the Clone Wars. Of course, it's already much more common knowledge that the custom characters have all of the abilities in the game built into one, like having the ability to enter droid-only keypads and go through tiny hatches, but what's less known is that you actually unlock bonus pieces for the customizable characters when you 100% the game. Some of these pieces allow you to create, you guessed it, Asajj Ventress and Saesee Tiin. The complete saga not offering something greater for 100%ing the game is widely criticized as it is, but if we ignore all the valid critique about it, what the game does give you is a pretty cool reference to these characters. Greedo camera. You know the bounty hunter cameras all throughout the first 3 games? In the second game, some of these have Greedo's face on them, which, I mean, it makes sense because he's a bounty hunter. But what's fascinating though is that Greedo's face is only on a few of them in the second game. I guess the developers at TT Games knew about this, and so when the complete saga came out, all of these were changed to have an image of Boba Fett instead. Accessing debug without hacking. It is completely possible to access the debug menu in LEGO Star Wars 2 without tampering the game in any way. There's a hard-coded button sequence that, upon being figured out, means that anyone who has the game and knows what buttons to press can just access the game's debug with a completely vanilla copy. The 360 version of the second game requires this button sequence, with the DS version requiring a similar pattern. It lets you 100% the game, access various elements of any level, and it's a really helpful tool for getting game footage and stuff like that as well. Jedi Friend. In the arena stage of Episode 2, some of the Jedi in the background of all of the chaos are just generic smiley Jedi. This has led to an ongoing joke in the community of these guys being called Jedi Friends. The joke also comes from a mistake on a previous Iceberg chart about the game, which played a role in shaping the joke as well. Dexter's Diner in Complete Saga. Dexter's Diner was never originally in the Complete Saga, but with a fan-made mod made by Linterni Gamer, it's possible to be able to explore the diner without having to play the first game. The mod is called Classic Saga, and it adds far more than just the diner. It adds an exterior hub, a secret room in the diner that leads to a hub very similar to the prototype hub of the first game, and a lot of characters now use their original textures just to generalize some of the changes. I think this mod turned out very sleek. Everything looks really solid. It's clear that Linterni is truly dedicated to the craft. I'll leave a link in the description to download the mod, as well as a tutorial that Linterni made to install the mod for those that are interested in trying it out. The complete saga has some leftover files for the diner in the finished game, like these 4 unused sound files for the inside and outside of the place, including ambience, which is odd since nearly everything in the files for that game ended up being used. Jango level. Nearly everything that is speculated about the Jango level can all be tied back to this one unused cutscene from the first game simply called Jango. Not to be confused with this cutscene that is in the game, playing right before the Jango fight in Discovery on Kamino. Here's the cutscene. This is the only video I could even find of this cutscene anywhere, as I looked through several unused cutscene videos and could only find this one from a guy named Roger Rogers, so thank you for that. But as for what's actually happening here, is that this cutscene is assumed to have been originally created for a scrapped fight with Obi-Wan and Jango Fett, not on Kamino, but rather Geonosis. The best guess the community has is that it would have been a fight against Jango in the Slave One, which is the ship that you fight on Kamino, before he escapes. Aside from this, there is no further evidence to back up these claims, and until there is, all that can be done about this very almost non-existent amount of information is simply speculate about what could have been. There's actually a lot more unused cutscenes in the first game alone than I thought there would be, with well over 20, being graciously compiled into 3 separate video compilations by none other than Linterna Gamer on YouTube in July of 2019. This exact theorized level did eventually end up in the Skywalker saga, being the Jango Fett space battle over Geonosis. 1999 Landspeeder. The original trilogy has what looks like to be the Landspeeder set from 1999. The complete saga also features said Landspeeder, but none of them are even in the exact set. Color differences mainly set them apart, but believe it or not, I'm actually wasting your time by telling you this because this isn't what this entry refers to. It actually refers to something much, much more obscure. If you go to the 3rd level of Episode 4, if you look around for a bit, you'll eventually find a billboard that has the 1999 Landspeeder set on it. You have to open a stormtrooper door to get back to the spot, but it's pretty hard to miss once you go through the other side. Just like the ones in-game though, this one also features the same color differences and is actually more tan than the already discolored ones that you ride in-game. Darth Plagueis. For those, including myself, who may have forgotten about this character, Darth Plagueis was a Moon Dark Lord of the Sith who was the person that trained Palpatine in secret to become Darth Sidious. They worked together for a very long time, and attempted to figure out how to achieve immortality through all kinds of sciences and bioengineering. Plagueis was eventually murdered in the middle of his sleep by Sidious, who had already taught him everything he knew prior to his demise. Palpatine brings this up in Revenge of the Sith as a way to manipulate Anakin even further by suggesting a way to make people he loves, like Padme, unable to die. You might be wondering why I even bring this up to begin with. The reason is because according to this section of collection.txt in the character game data for the complete saga, Darth Plagueis was at least at some point planned to have been the original 100% unlock reward. Plagueis would have also had every single ability in the game if it ended up being the unlock. Sounds awesome, actually. But this never ended up being the case. I don't know why, though. This would have been a great reward, especially for something as time-consuming as getting a 100% save file. As cool as it would have been, it's really not too much different from what is the 100% unlock, being the ability to make characters with super Jedi powers. Custom characters have every ability in the game, so I guess you could just make your own Darth Plagueis as a custom character and it would be just as cool. Dexter's Diner Negative Emotional Aura. I've had my fair share of discussing this topic on this channel, going as far back as the very real emotion that comes with really any part of Super Mario 64, for example. As for the diner from the first game, there's definitely aspects of it that I could see people drawing the conclusion that it carries negative energy. The first and most immediate thing that drives that point home is just how empty it always is. Even if I sit here for well over 10 minutes, not a lot of characters go through this like they do the cantina in the other games. The music, combined with the sounds the doors make, really do culminate in what is a pretty, eventually eerie experience if you stay in here in silence long enough. It could also be the color choices of the diner itself, like the gray and red tones that don't really scream liveliness or pop out in any large way, at least to me. Whatever the case though, I am just as intrigued by the thought of this place having negative energy as I am curious about if anyone else watching this has similar experiences with the diner. I had the misfortune of never playing the first game growing up, and only growing up with the complete saga, so if there's anyone who would know if the diner carries negativity with it, it wouldn't be me. Also, I totally forgot how the diner is just surrounded by this dark void of nothingness, That definitely screams liminal, at least in some capacity. Like, just look at the doors when they open. There's nothing behind them at all. Well, it would be truly liminal in this way if you just ignored the fact that you can just walk out the front door of the diner into the outside area. Lost Temple. The prototype for the complete saga had an Indiana Jones level that was going to be included in the game but was scrapped. The level itself is no different than the start of the actual LEGO Indiana Jones game, so it makes me wonder why it wasn't included in the finished game. Perhaps the developers didn't want to spoil the start of that game? But that can't be right. Unless John Burton says or has said something publicly about it, really it can only be speculated at this point as to why it's not in the complete saga. Ben Kenobi debut scene change. The first time you see Ben Kenobi in the first game, he makes his entrance with this shot, having a large rock in the way and generally being more dirty and filled with dust. The complete saga changes this to be much more clear, this time having him walk right out in the open, being far less ominous in his entrance than he was the first time he appeared in a LEGO game. I much prefer the first one, as I think it captures the idea of him just kind of showing up out of nowhere much better than it does with the second version. A small creative decision that, in my opinion, completely changes the tone in how he's introduced. LEGO Star Wars 2 Game Boy Advance 100% Lockout. The Game Boy Advance version of the game caps the completion number to 99%, even if you do literally everything there is to do inside of the game. I've read comments on Reddit about people talking about how hard they worked on collecting everything just to have the game not be able to recognize 100%. Whether it's a hard-coded issue or there's just something that is impossible to complete that adds to it, therefore the game thinks you're at 99, it's just impossible. There are instances of other games being stuck at 99% like the GTA games, but those are deliberate as those games purposefully punish you with 99% if you use cheat codes in your save file. This game's progress tracker, though, is just entirely bugged and doesn't work. Imperial Spy is the Sith boss of Episode 4. As funny as this character looks, he is much more deceiving than you would initially think. Every other episode of the game has an obvious Sith boss, whether cutscenes foreshadow it, or if you've just seen the films. But the Imperial Spy being the Sith boss of Episode 4 is not really that expected at all, at least to me. With the character being referred to as such in the original trilogy and the complete saga, his real name is Garandan, and funny enough, there's a crazy piece of lore about this character in the film version that we'll get to in a second. In order to complete Episode 4 Chapter 3, you have to kill him and then escape from the planet in the Millennium Falcon. Unbeknownst to me, though, and probably a lot of other people, is something that has to do with the Imperial Spy in the films. Because of the person who originally voices the spy, though heavily altered so you would never be able to tell, of all people to be the one to do this, it was actor John Wayne, making it technically his final contribution to movie roles. Apparently the audio was just some stock audio that had been trashed by the studio, with him apparently saying something that was close to the lines, "Alright, what are you doing in this town?" But no verifiable evidence has yet to surface online to confirm or deny this claim. Nevertheless, though, it is really funny to me that of all people to have voiced that spy, it was the same person who was one of the most popular and well-known actors in the golden age of Hollywood. You know, Hitchcock is technically old enough to have made some sort of contribution to the Star Wars films, so I'll be waiting for whenever that comes out, hopefully in the next 50 years at least. Flash games. LEGO Star Wars has had a couple of different Flash games throughout the last 15 years, with LEGO Star Wars 3 The Clone Wars Beta being one that stands out to me the most. There's one Flash game, however, that ended up becoming lost media for a number of years and was only recently discovered and fully restored. Reddit user B-Neil made a post on the r/helpmefind subreddit in August of 2023, exclaiming about a Flash Lego game that consisted of a Lego Star Wars dogfighting game that they swore existed sometime between 2011 to 2014. It was played in a top-down view, played with the keyboard, and involved one player versus a CPU opponent. Turns out that footage of this game existed on YouTube in as early as February 2015, and the game in question was a Flash game titled Lego Star Wars Ace Assault. And now that I'm looking at it, that really also reminds me of something that I played in around the same time that very well could be this game that was lost for several years. Since Adobe Flash Player is long dead now, you'd likely have trouble playing it at this point, but there does exist an archive of nearly every LEGO web game in the description, including, that's right, the Ace Assault Flash game, if you want to play it. Or, I guess if you want to try to play it. Weird class choices. Some of the attributes that are given to characters seem honestly completely random. Like, why do the Grievous guards jump so high? Is it just because they can? Like, what's the reason to have that on this character in specific, you know? Could be some lore about these guys that I'm missing here, but it's really, really funny. Editing oversight. General Grievous jumps really high, so it would make a lot of sense for his bodyguard to be able to match his height. But let's just assume that there's just no logical reason for him being able to jump that high because it's funny. Jar Jar is also kind of weird in this regard, but his ability is of course more integral to the story of the game, so that one makes far more sense. Mr. Bones from the Skywalker Saga is also just classified so strangely. The game classes him as being an extra, rather than a villain, even though he is functionally identical to them. I guess Mr. Bones is different since he isn't a main villain portrayed in the films? It's a weird detail anyway, at least in my opinion. This entry is also largely subjective in its nature, but it's definitely still something worthy of conversing about. Why aren't some extra toggle characters regular ones? Why aren't some extra toggle characters regular ones? The complete saga has 16 extra characters that you can only play as in certain levels with extra toggle enabled, and some of them don't really make sense to be extras, at least in my opinion. The skeleton being extra and only these levels? Sure. Training remote only being accessible in 3-5? Sure. Han Solo's Carbonite Frozen variant only being in these levels? Okay, I can understand that. The ones I can't understand are characters like the AT-AT driver, the Scout Trooper, and even the Rebel Engineer, just to name 3 out of the 16 extras. It just doesn't really make sense to me why they leave these characters out who otherwise fit right into the story, and arguably the gameplay too. Now, of course we can't be too terribly judgmental about these things, as the devs did still give the option to even play them at all, though I do think it's still an interesting conversation to be had, especially from a completionist and everything goes standpoint. Some of these extra characters, like the mouse droid as shown here, and is only playable in these levels, did end up becoming a fully fledged character in the Skywalker Saga, so credit where credit's due there. Chancellor Palpatine's uselessness is deliberately deceptive. Palpatine's use in this game, as far as I'm concerned, is for sure an intent way of lowering the guard of the main characters in the story, only to make them much more vulnerable later when they're endured into a false sense of security. I don't know how much of this is a matter of LEGO Star Wars more than it is just the story of Star Wars, but Palpatine seeming to just be a guy who you initially save by killing Count Dooku in Episode 3, making him look far more innocent than he was, making you also become sympathetic towards him, definitely helped Palpatine with everything he had going on behind the scenes that everyone not on the dark side had no idea about until it was too late. The other meaning here is more literal and character-based, as Palpatine's character in the complete saga is just so useless. It doesn't even do anything. His ability to jump is funny though, being his greatest strength as an in-game character. Imperial Friend. The Imperial friend ties back into the joke about the Jedi friend being background extras, with nothing beyond them than that. Said characteristics can also be applied to the Imperial counterparts in the game as well. Classic space shooter graveyard. There's an area in Episode 3 in The Empire Strikes Back where you can find this almost graveyard-looking spot that has a bunch of sets buried in the ground. This doesn't show up anywhere else in the game, and I'm struggling to find a reason why these were even placed here to begin with, ignoring obvious assumptions like aesthetic purposes and art direction. More interestingly, it's located inside that large creature you fly into, so I think it's likely just meant to resemble either other people who happen to fall into the trap, or the ships could be how fish food is to whales. Riveting to think about, right? Challenge level complete unsettling vibes. Is it just me, or does the challenge complete sequence feel a little off-putting? I think a lot of it is down to mainly how the game just kind of stops when it's done. That, combined with those jingle sounds, really make for a weird and abrupt ending to the session whenever a challenge is over. It always just felt very sudden. Not enough to be a jump scare, but definitely enough to be noteworthy. The lust to complete LEGO games more than any other. There's something about LEGO games from a completionist angle that just tickles the one spot in my brain, as well as many others, that needs it the most. Whether it's collecting as many studs as there are possible, to getting every single mini-kit, these games are just plain satisfying to get 100% on. And yeah, this game has its moments of frustration, like with almost any other game, but it's okay, we forgive you. Though I wish the PC port of this game let you use windowed mode without using external programs to force it into it. It makes alt-tabbing kind of annoying a lot of the time unless you can figure out a way to get the game out of this, which I managed to thankfully do. But still, just a miscellaneous gripe. I do think there's also something to be said about how games like this also likely satisfy a lot of older people's ADHD when it comes to wanting to complete everything. I think it's easy to get so invested into something to where you look away from what you're doing and before you know it, 7 hours have gone by and you've skipped eating dinner. Is that just me though? I don't know, maybe it is. I'm pretty weird. We'll find out when this video goes up. The real reason Imperial Spy isn't in Skywalker Saga. Our beloved Imperial friend wasn't implemented into the Skywalker Saga, despite happily being a part of the previous games. But why? It's commonly believed that he was scrapped due to being a completely useless character, but I believe it's much deeper than that. This character, even though I love the way he looks, in the complete saga, he is just utterly useless. He's unarmed, therefore unable to attack anything. He can build, but I'm going to ignore that for dramatic effect. He can't use droid panels, can't use bounty hunter panels, can't use force abilities, can't double jump. He does have one ability though that was so powerful that it swiftly prompted the developers to wipe him out of the Skywalker Saga. Pressing B with this character on an Xbox controller causes him to pull out a radio and make some weird fruity noises. Well, it turns out that this ability is more than an animation. If you pull out the radio in front of droids, it will temporarily disable them. Or at least it's supposed to, because I just can't get it to work. This guy is so useless that I tried for over 10 minutes to get his ability to work on droids, and I literally just couldn't do it. Even standing right in front of them with the invincibility extra doesn't work at all. Ironic. Insane uselessness aside, the real reason he was removed is honestly quite bone-chilling. The controversy came to light the first time in 2014, when a YouTuber Jedi Bob apparition. This is a clear reference to the Wario apparition that I've also talked about on this channel, and is a pretty popular joke, I guess you could call it, in the Mario 64 community. That's the apparition part of this entry, however. The other half, Jedi Bob, is a real character who, originally referred to as Jedi Knight, was part of some really early LEGO Star Wars sets from 2002, with its discontinuation happening only last year in 2024. He has a couple of variants, 2 coming from sets and 2 others coming from media. And he can be found in 2 distinct sets, being the 7163 Republic gunship from 2002, and the 75388 Jedi Bob's Starfighter from 2024, with the more recent set clearly playing into the Jedi Bob thing a whole lot more. Sightings of Rebel Friend in the movies. Ever since the dawn of the film remasters, there have been multiple accounts of people claiming to have seen the Rebel Friend in the movies. Average accounts describe the person as being eerily similar to the game version, claiming that there's an extra in the films who appears to be a red version of the Rebel Trooper. It's not entirely known what version copies of the film contain this, or how many there are, or if it's even real. But one thing is certain, is that the next time you watch a Star Wars movie, you might just miss seeing one of the most forgotten characters by doing something as little as looking down at your snack as you take a bite. And who knows? Maybe you'll have a completely normal viewing experience, or you might just end up as one of the people making posts like the Proboscis Luke story, insisting that you really did see something real, and that it couldn't have been a fabric of your imagination. It had to have been something inside of the movie trying to claw its way out of the confines of its existence. One thing I will say about this is that no matter how abstract, how severe, or how hyper-real something might be perceived by you, there's nothing that can't be explained, no matter how reasonable or unreasonable the commonly simple explanation might be. So go out there, experience the unexperienced, drive your willingness to the unnatural and the unsettling. And as always, thanks for watching. Well, we've reached the very end. If you made it this far, then 1, I'm impressed and proud of you. 2, are you subbed to my channel? Because if not, you should be. And 3, this video was very fun to make. As slow as I've been over the past few months, this project was so fun. And I really can't give enough credit to Wilfred Cthulhu for not only making the entire chart, but being a huge help when it came to overlooking things and providing additional niche context that I otherwise would have struggled way more to find if it wasn't for him, so thank you. I know you're watching this at some point, so thank you, like for real. Well, I don't really know what to say anymore. Maybe I should just ramble about how my day's been to the people who want to hear it. Sorry about that, I'm sore. I've been working out a lot more. I skipped doing shoulders and delts for a very long time, and I'm getting back into doing shoulders and delts, and so my shoulders are just absolutely fried. I skipped chest day, which I need to be put down for probably, and now that I just finished voicing the script, I might go to the park. I'm thinking about getting an e-bike or just a bike to ride a bike around the park, because right now the weather is fall and it's pretty nice weather. So I think I want to do something like that. I have some goldfish on my desk too. I think I'll eat those, but they're not really substance. They're just a snack. Maybe I'll make a Chipotle, but I don't know. I don't have anything to say, but I also wanted an excuse to put gameplay of Gravosphere in the video because I really like this game. All right. See ya. Are you really not subscribed? What's wrong with you? I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. I really do want you to subscribe though. Can you please do it? Just do it. If I ask very nicely, will you do it? Okay, watch. Can you please subscribe? That was so dumb. I'm leaving it at, I don't care.